For 52 years, I lived in silence. I prayed. I obeyed. I wore the habit like armor. I thought I had buried every desire, every whisper of temptation. But then she came, with eyes like storms and a voice that shattered my peace. She didn't ask me to break my vows. She made me feel again. What happened next wasn't holy, but it was the most real thing I've ever known. The convent was always quiet at dawn, the kind of quiet that settles deep in your bones and keeps you from remembering who you were before you took the veil. For 52 years, I had lived by the bell, woke by it, ate by it, prayed to it, slept under its echo. I no longer needed to look at clocks. The rhythm of God's house pulsed inside me. I was Sister Agnes, the oldest nun at St. Mary's and the keeper of silence. My vows were etched in habit and humility. I didn't speak unless needed. I didn't look unless directed. I didn't feel, not anymore, until the day she arrived. They said we were getting a new visitor, a secular volunteer from a nearby university, coming to help catalog the library's ancient manuscripts. She would stay with us for 3 weeks. A young woman with too many questions and too little reverence, I assumed. I prepared myself to be cordial but distant. Curious minds were dangerous, but I wasn't prepared for her. She didn't walk in, she entered, confident, composed, yet somehow unsure of the space. Her name was Isabel, mid-30s maybe, dark hair pulled back, no makeup, but her eyes, oh, those eyes. They saw too much, and when they met mine for the first time, it felt like a thread had been pulled from my soul. "Hello, Sister Agnes," she said with a gentle nod. I returned a polite smile and gestured to the hallway. I didn't trust my voice. My silence had always been my strength, but now it felt like a shield cracking at the edges. For the next few days, Isabel worked quietly in the library. I watched from afar, pretending to dust shelves, rearrange books, or pray longer than usual. But I was watching, always watching. She noticed, of course. "You're not like the others," she said one afternoon, breaking the silence as I brought her tea. "I've just been here longer," I replied, surprised by the sound of my own voice. "No," she smiled. "It's not that. There's something in your eyes, still burning." I froze. My hands trembled slightly, the tea almost spilling. "Be careful with your words," I whispered. "Why?" she asked softly. "Are words your only sin?" I walked away. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on my cot, hands clasped tightly in prayer. but my thoughts were anything but holy. I wasn't afraid of her, not really. I was afraid of me, of what I was feeling, of what I was remembering, of what I had locked away half a century ago and buried under holy obedience. And yet something about her voice lingered, like incense in a chapel long after the Mass ends. The next morning, I avoided her, took the long route through the garden, spent hours polishing brass fixtures no one cared about. But by noon, I was in the library again. She was sitting on the floor, surrounded by open books, and when I walked in, she looked up and said, "Tell me your story." I wanted to run. Instead, I sat down beside her, not close, but not far either. And for the first time in 52 years, I felt awake. The next few days blurred into something I hadn't felt in decades: anticipation. Every morning, I told myself I wouldn't go to the library, that I'd stay in the chapel or help in the kitchen or scrub the stone floors until my knees bled. But somehow, I always found my way back to the scent of old paper and to her. Isabel didn't push. She never asked again about my story. Instead, she talked about the texts she found, ancient prayers, letters between nuns in the 1800s, coded messages they'd written to hide forbidden friendships, or more. She read them aloud sometimes, her voice low, reverent, too reverent. One morning, she came across a weathered journal wrapped in linen. It belonged to a nun from 1847, Sister Marie Claire. She had served in the same convent, and she had loved someone. "Listen to this," Isabel whispered. She kissed me with trembling lips, and I saw heaven not above me, but in her eyes. My breath caught. I stared at the worn edge of the table, afraid to look at her. Isabel continued reading. "We hide behind God, but God cannot hide from love." I couldn't move. It felt like that voice from the past was cracking something open inside me. "That's enough," I said. My voice was hoarse, too soft. "Too late." Isabel looked at me, and there was no teasing this time. Just understanding. She closed the book gently and asked, "What are you afraid of, Sister Agnes?" "Everything," but I didn't say that. I simply stood up and left, walking so fast my rosary bounced against my hip like a warning bell. That night, I prayed harder than ever, begged God to extinguish whatever was rising in me. I was 74 years old. I had seen death, war, suffering, but nothing frightened me more than the way Isabel looked at me, like I still mattered, like I could still be touched, still be loved. The following day, I avoided her, and the next. But on the third, I found something tucked under the chapel candle where I always sat. It was a drawing, a simple sketch, the corner of a book, a woman's hands, delicate and strong. My hands. I recognized them. The shading was soft, loving, careful. No name, no message, but I knew who had left it. And I felt something melt. That afternoon, I found her outside in the garden, alone, reading. I shouldn't be here, I told her. She looked up. Then why are you? I didn't answer. I just sat on the bench across from her. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. There was something louder between us than words could ever be. When the bell rang for evening prayer, she rose. But before walking away, she leaned down and whispered, "You're allowed to feel, sister. Even God loved with a human heart." I sat there long after she'd gone, clutching the sketch in my hand like it was the only truth I had left. It was raining the next morning, not a dramatic storm, just a quiet, persistent drizzle that softened everything it touched. I stood by the chapel window, watching the drops trail down the glass like they carried secrets from heaven itself. She walked in without knocking. Isabel, soaked from head to toe. She had forgotten her umbrella, or maybe she had left it behind on purpose. Her hair clung to her cheeks. Her cardigan was damp and clung to her shape, and her eyes, as soon as they met mine, I felt the world outside the convent disappear. "I needed to see you," she said. No pretense this time, no clever questions or playful smirks. I reached for the towel by the pew and handed it to her. She took it, drying her arms slowly. We were alone. No footsteps, no voices, just the rain and the question hanging between us. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered. "Doing what?" Looking at me like that. Her lips parted slightly. "Because you're beautiful." I took a step back. "Stop. Don't say things like that." "Why not?" she said, stepping forward. "Because I'm wrong, or because you believe me?" Her words struck a place inside me I had buried long ago. Not because I hadn't felt attraction in my life, but because I had silenced it, caged it, baptized it in guilt. "I'm not who you think I am," I said, barely above a breath. "I'm old. I'm worn. I've given my life to silence." She smiled gently, her eyes never leaving mine. "You're more alive than anyone I've ever met." Before I could respond, she reached out and touched my hand. It was the smallest touch, fingers grazing knuckles. But it was enough, enough to unravel 52 years of restraint, enough to make me feel real. I didn't pull away. For a long moment, we just stood there, breathing in unison. The chapel, the rain, the world, it all faded. She moved closer, not daring, not aggressive, but close enough for her warmth to reach me. I'm not asking you to break anything, she said softly. I'm just asking you to be honest. I looked down at our hands, now gently intertwined. Honesty, I repeated. After all this time, I wouldn't know where to begin. Then let's begin here, she whispered. Just stay. I did. We sat side by side in the last pew, our shoulders barely touching, but my heart pounding like I had run 1,000 miles. She didn't push further, and that night I didn't pray to forget. I prayed for the strength to remember. It had been exactly 19 days since Isabel arrived. By now, the other sisters knew her by name. They greeted her kindly, shared meals with her, admired her dedication to preserving the old texts. But they didn't see what I saw. They didn't feel what I felt every time she entered a room, every time her eyes found me. And they certainly didn't know about that afternoon in the chapel. Since then, we hadn't spoken of it. We hadn't touched again. But something had shifted between us, something quiet and alive, like a candle flickering in a sealed room. Each day, I expected the guilt to consume me, but it didn't. What consumed me was the longing and the fear that her time with us would end. You've changed, Sister Beatrice said as we prepared the altar for Sunday Mass. Changed? You smile more. You seem lighter. I said nothing, just adjusted the linens with trembling hands. That night, I went to the library after Vespers. The door creaked as I entered, but the room was empty. Isabel's usual spot by the window was cold. Her notebooks were gone. I felt a sudden chill that had nothing to do with the stone walls. She was leaving. Panic surged through me. I found her in the cloister, packing her things into a worn leather satchel. I didn't want to say goodbye, she said quietly. I didn't want to see you pretend it meant nothing. It didn't mean nothing, I said, sharper than I intended. She turned slowly. Then what did it mean? I walked toward her, heart pounding so hard I thought it would echo off the walls. It meant that for the first time in 52 years, I felt seen. She stepped closer and touched. Yes, I whispered, and terrified. She placed her hand gently over her chest. Me too. There was a long silence. And then I did something I never imagined I'd do again. I reached up and removed my veil. It fell to the floor like a curtain dropping at the end of a play. Her breath caught. I saw her eyes fill with something raw, not lust, not triumph, just awe, just human awe. I stepped forward. You said I was allowed to feel. Then let me tell you what I feel now. She didn't speak. I took her face gently in my hands and kissed her, not with hunger, but with release. The kiss was soft, reverent, like prayer. And for the first time in over 5 decades, I tasted truth on my tongue. When we pulled apart, neither of us moved. I could hear my heart pounding. I could hear the blood in my ears. I knew what I had done, and I didn't regret it. That night, I didn't sleep in my cell. I didn't sleep at all. I sat in the chapel until dawn, my veil folded neatly beside me, the cross still around my neck, heavier than ever. I hadn't confessed what happened to anyone, not even to God, because for once I didn't want forgiveness. I wanted to hold on to what I felt, even if only for a few more hours. When the morning bell rang, I didn't rise. I stayed on the bench, hands folded, heart open, eyes watching the candles burn low. Isabel found me there. I was going to leave without saying anything, she said softly, standing near the altar. But I couldn't, not after what we shared. I nodded slowly. There are things I can't undo, I said. And things you don't want to, she replied. I turned to her, and for a moment she looked almost afraid, as if she expected me to shut the door we had just opened, to retreat back into silence and shadows. But I didn't. Come with me, she said suddenly. You don't have to stay in this place. You don't have to keep hiding. I looked around the chapel, at the statues, the altar, the floor worn by decades of kneeling. It wasn't just a place, it was my entire life. I'm not hiding, I whispered. Not anymore. She stepped closer. Then don't say goodbye, say yes. Tears welled in my eyes. I can't leave this place without a goodbye, I said. So we stood there together, and I said goodbye to every silence, every moment I denied myself the right to be touched, seen, loved. I said goodbye to the woman I had buried under layers of obedience. And then I took off the cross, not in shame, but in truth, and placed it gently on the pew. I gave 52 years of vows to the church, I said. Now I make just one more. She tilted her head, breath caught. I vow not to disappear again. We walked out together, not in secret, not in fear, but in sunlight. I don't know what tomorrow holds. I don't know what judgment will come from others, from the church, from God. But I do know that love the real kind, does not shrink in darkness. It stands, it breaks vows, it becomes one. Some vows are made in silence, but love speaks louder. If this story moved you, leave a comment, share it, and tell us, what vow would you break for love?